I remember when I started with Irena 3 years ago, she gave me the first piece from Tchaikovsky's album for the young. I really liked it, and I played it for the next lesson, and she asked me if I wanted to play all 24 pieces in the book. And I did, and I ended up playing it for the recital at the end of the year. And since then, I've played a huge series of pieces every recital.
I first heard the Bach Prelude and Fugue in C minor in a movie, and I thought, oh my gosh, that sounds impossible. But then I told Irena that I wanted to play it, and she said, it will be hard, but you can learn it, just learn it one measure a day. And then, after 56 days, I finally learned it, and I was really, really happy that I had learned it.
When I think of Irena, just hundreds and hundreds of memories and stories come to my mind. But the one I would like to tell you now is one I recall every time I play a waltz. It happened to me about 4 years ago. I was 8 years old and I was learning my first waltz. I tried my best to learn the notes at home, but when I arrived at my class and played my piece for Irena, she interrupted me saying, "Let's waltz." So we spent the next about half an hour waltzing around the room and just having a blast. And guess who was leading?
There was a time when I was struggling with my interest in piano and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to continue because I didn't like practicing, I didn't like doing the same pieces over and over. And so instead of saying, you have to practice, like most teachers would have, I think, Irena instead said, okay, that's fine. So what we're going to do is every other lesson, we had 2 lessons a week, so once a week, we'll spend the entire lesson just sight reading. And I remember we spent hours and hours sight reading many of Haydn's symphonies, I think some of Mozart's as well. And that got my interest going because I loved getting to know new music. And so that actually kept my interest in piano through that rough time. And then eventually I got over the hump and started liking it on my own. And I'm still playing today, now as a junior in college. And I think that without that understanding on her part, I might have never continued.
When I started studying with Irena, I was 15 years old and I had just come from Bulgaria to the United States. And I had always dreamed of playing the organ. I had heard some things about the harpsichord. So I was very curious about those instruments. And I mentioned this to Irena also because in the lesson she would very often say, well, that's how something would sound if played on the harpsichord, like let's say when we were discussing how to play Bach, or that's how something would sound played on the organ. So she was very involved not only teaching me to play the piano, but actually developing my musical views and my musical personality. And so when I mentioned this to her, she said, well, why don't you go and study some harpsichord and organ? And not only she said that, she actually found me the teachers who taught me. And I studied with Lois Narvi at the Levin School, where I was studying with Irena. I was studying harpsichord with Lois. And a friend of Irena's was an organ player and an organ teacher, Harvey Van Buren. She put me in touch with him. And on top of everything, she financially supported me in those efforts because at that point my family had just came to the States, and you know that was quite an extravagant entertainment, you know, not only to have twice a week piano and chamber music and theory, but also to study 2 other completely different instruments, organ and harpsichord. And so Irena has participated in my musical development not only as my guidance and not only as my teacher and close friend and supporter. She has actually supported me in the very straightforward sense of this word, in the financial sense, in any moment when this presented a difficulty for my musical development, and she was always there to help with that.
I have known Irena and her husband Henry for many years, and I am always amazed at the kind of perfect ensemble that exists in their family. They are two musicians. They are two wise people who know a lot about the human soul. They have different approaches to the human character, but the way they work together and the unity that they achieve as a duo is really part of the magic of Irena's school. Irena and Henry are so much together that it is impossible to imagine Irena without Henry and Henry without Irena. Each of them has traveled a long journey to find the other, and they came together to form a family filled with absolute harmony. They live for each other. They can talk about anything, and they hear each other. Actually, they often hear each other without saying a word. Their love and tremendous mutual respect form the basis of their relationship, which in turn attracts many different people with different cultural backgrounds. It is a great pleasure to be in their company. One of the most influential Russian musicologists, the author of fundamental books on various aspects of music, Dr. Irena Orlov, is a great supporter of Irena's discoveries in music pedagogy.